Welcome to Wrestling and Everything Coast to Coast with your hosts, Buddy Sotello Esquire and Evan Ginzburg. Welcome to show number 100, everybody. 100 shows. And if you'd asked me when we first started, would we even make it to 100 shows? Would we even live to see 100 shows? We weren't sure. I mean, for those of you that just started watching, especially the thousands of viewers now that we had check us out from last week, you might be new to the program and you don't know how all this got started, but it really did just get started with me and Evan, after years of saying we should finally do a show where we talk about the differences between the East Coast and the West Coast and the wrestling scenes for both of them. It only took a nationwide pandemic that's killed nearly 1 million Americans to bring us together and to put the show together. But here we are, 100 shows later. Evan, what do you have to say?
I lost 6 friends during the pandemic, and this show from night 1 was therapeutic. And, we've done so many memorial shows during the 100 that, really it's been therapy for all of us. Mike Lano's off tonight, Mike included. And last week we finally broke 1,000 views. So very happy that we finally caught on to some degree. And
what took you guys so long?
Yeah, I like to say that the everything part of Wrestling and Everything is what distinguishes the show, because how many fucking shows do you need to go over Raw, SmackDown, and AEW? The same matches, overanalyzed week after week after week. It's numbing. So we wanted to do something different. And for example, I'm online today, and I see one page after another with old white folk like us ranting, venting against the Super Bowl halftime show tomorrow. Why, pray tell? Because they have rappers on. Instead of ancient rockers, they have rappers. Now, I love R&B. Rap, hip-hop is R&B's cousin. I happen to like hip-hop. I happen to appreciate it. Unlike Buddy's brother, who doesn't appreciate it, who's a musician no less. Okay, so
he's not a huge rap or R&B fan, but I mean he has different views on that, but he still respects the amount of talent that it takes to make that kind of music. I mean, he just doesn't want to see it at the halftime show, but it's not like that's not a reason that he's blatantly against it. He doesn't think that there isn't any talent. I mean, that's a different story, and I think that he appreciates it. I know I do. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm a huge fan of the NFL. I'm a huge fan of the Super Bowl, but I have, out of 35 Super Bowls that I've watched, I've missed every single halftime. I hate halftime shows. So it doesn't matter who it is. I'm not discriminating. I just simply do. I don't care who it was until they get Weird Al to do the halftime show. Then that's when I'll watch. The rest, I don't care.
I'm the exact opposite. I don't care one iota about football. I haven't turned it on 1 minute the entire season. I only watch it for the halftime show. I plan on being at the gym or at the movies during much of the Super Bowl tomorrow, because I'll be the only one in there, and this way I won't die from COVID. I'll be the only person at the gym tomorrow during the Super Bowl. So I thought Prince at halftime during the Super Bowl years ago was one of the greatest things I've ever seen. And I look forward to, I'm a music guy. I mean, I'm not a sports guy. I like boxing. I watch boxing constantly, but
I used to love boxing as a kid. I just got to tell you that boxing is one of those things like wrestling that has changed immeasurably over our lifetime. It's gone from being one type of sport to being now a lot more like wrestling in a lot of ways, especially with, you know, tomato can matchups and squash matches being what pretty much is the de rigueur versus, I mean, you look at the talents that we watched, especially you growing up, but even I was at the tail end of the Muhammad Ali years growing up. And he was fighting on Wide World of Sports for free every week or like once a month against the best boxers that you could find on the planet.
Yes and no. Ali was my idol. He faced the greatest heavyweights of his day: Foreman, Frazier, Norton, Shavers. Unfortunately, Larry Holmes at the end, which did not end well. But Ali also fought the Bum of the Month Club on TV for free, and because his skills had faded. And interestingly enough, part of his decline was due to his match with Inoki, because Inoki was kicking him in the shins the whole
I remember
time.
about that. He was kicking him in the leg and his knee swelled up. And
he had blood clots, and he had all kinds of damage to his legs. And the theory is that Inoki helped slow down Ali in his later years. So I grew up on Duran, Leonard, Hearns, and Hagler in the 80s, and it was just phenomenal.
And Spinks and Leon Spinks and you had Norton, as you pointed out, was still in his prime there, and George Foreman, you know,
Foreman, yeah. Foreman was a monster.
Holyfield. You know, the rise of Vander and Tyson. Let's not leave out Mike Tyson.
That's already the 90s, Tyson and Holyfield. Yeah, I mean, those guys were great. Tyson went the Macho Camacho route and, you know, sabotaged his own career. But in his prime, the guy was unbelievable. He was a monster. But anyway, boxing today, the problem is there's too many divisions, too many weight classes, super this, and, you know, there's too many WBA, WBO, WBC, IBF. I mean, it got watered down along the way. And another problem, like today on DAZN, DAZN, which basically took over from HBO, DAZN and Showtime and ESPN are really the homes of boxing in this country. So DAZN is over there in England today, and what I find is if it's a close match, the hometown guy almost always wins. You know, it's just the way it is. And I have friends in the boxing industry who tell me, no, it's not quote unquote fixed, but you know, the judges know you got a 5-star hotel, 5-star restaurants, good payday. They kind of know who the hometown boy is, you know.
Well, sure, yeah, and certainly when you have a sport that comes down to judges, when it's not a knockout, you know, you're always going to have controversy. That's just kind of unfortunately the way that, you know, these. I mean, that's the only thing that would make the WWE even worse. Is if they added judges to the whole thing. That's about the only thing they could do that would make, you know, what is a difficult thing to watch even more difficult.
So Nakamura lost his Intercontinental Championship to Sami Zayn, and Nakamura defended it 4 times on TV in, you know, months or a year or whatever the reign was. They just totally neutered that poor guy. The guy was top 5 in the world when he was on top with New Japan. And WWE just made him another warm body on a card. And
well, it's the same thing with AJ Styles, and we saw with the Bullet Club and Gallows and Anderson. I mean, you know, and you know, I was making a joke with Bearcat Lee making his debut. Isn't he like just starting to show up now in
AEW?
Yeah, AEW. And I was like, has the WWE stopped pushing him yet? You know, they probably still have promos with Bearcat Lee that they haven't had a chance to run yet because their push was such an abortion. You know.
So the fanboys are on Lee because he put on a few pounds. So I always go, Vince has brainwashed you guys into thinking a wrestler's supposed to have a 6-pack of abs. He said, I grew up on Harley Race, Dusty Rhodes, Ray Stevens, Pat Patterson. They all had beer bellies. It didn't matter. They kick your ass.
The side of beef wrestler is hard to find these days. You know, who in your opinion is the greatest side of beef wrestler? Who do you think? Who do you feel is the greatest? I mean, you have a lot to choose from. Greg the Hammer Valentine did not have a Adonis build, but Adrian Adonis didn't have an Adonis build. Those guys, Bobby Eaton, you wouldn't call him, someone that, but he was fantastic in the ring. Jerry the Crusher, Jerry Blackwell.
Blackwell moved great for a big guy. That might be the answer to your question. The Maguire twins were practically immobile. I mean,
that's more a side of whale than it is side of beef. Those guys were. I'm just talking like guys who didn't look all cut like an Adonis, but had tremendous strength, like a Terry Gordy, for example. There's a guy that probably wouldn't be WWE material right now because his body wasn't chiseled. But could you find a tougher human being in the ring than Terry Gordy?
Terry Gordy was amazing, and Blackwell did drop kicks.
Yes. Yeah. Vader's another one of those guys that didn't have the chiseled build, but I mean, he was amazing in the ring. But the guy that I would say beats all of those folks, and he wasn't big in America, but he's one of my favorite wrestlers of all time, and that's Gary Albright.
Oh, yeah.
Now, there's a guy that was legitimately a tough dude. He was really, really brutal to the people he got in the ring with, and he was not chiseled. He had a big gut, and, his arms weren't all, veined out and everything like that. But of any wrestler that I would take in a real-life fight, if it wasn't Ken Shamrock or Dan Severn, Gary Albright would be the third person on the list.
But my question would be, how did this brainwashing filter down to the fanboys who mock Lee, because he put on a few pounds? The guy was just on his honeymoon.
What about Bray Wyatt? What a great wrestler Bray Wyatt is.
But I mean, so I sit at wrestling conventions, promoting 350 days or whatnot, and I don't think I've ever seen in general a worse group of bodies in one place. Okay. Now
you haven't been to a lot of comic book conventions. That's all I have to say. Is that I've been to my share of science fiction and comic book conventions, and those. But a lot of those are cross audiences. You'll find the same people that are at last week's comic book convention at the wrestling show. So.
I mean, if you're grotesquely out of shape, how do you mock a wrestler who's an athlete doing amazing things in the ring like Lee? And a lot of these fanboys are grotesquely out of shape. And I know I'm going to hear, oh, you're fat shaming, blah, blah, blah. But my point is they're mocking the other guy.
Yeah, and also to say, and again, I'm not one of those people that says, well, you have to do it to appreciate it. And you can't criticize it if you've never taken a bump because, look, I understand that. I mean, I criticize football, and I've never, played a pro game in my life, and I never even played, any kind of significant college stuff. So I understand that element of it. But there's also a level at which you can't say that there's zero talent behind these guys when they get in the ring. That these guys haven't already. No one gets to the WWE level that hasn't paid their dues in some serious fashion. And people don't really understand how many dues you do have to pay before you get to the WWE level.
And since we're talking about that, I don't quite understand why fans feel the need to mock wrestlers on a daily basis. Every single day, I see most overrated. I don't quite understand what people see in this one, etc. So on. This guy's just a jobber. I see this every day, and then there's these endless threads where they're just mocking these guys, and the AEW versus WWE wars where I hate this entire group of fans because they like the other promotion. I don't get it. I mean, these Peter Pans, they got nothing else, I guess, because this is what they do every day of the week. Every day of the week.
Well, it's a lot of it's the way to take out their own frustration over what goes on in their own lives and jobs and so forth. They have no control over that.
So mocking Keith Lee makes your own miserable life better?
For some people, I think that is how they operate. It's not right. I don't agree with it. It's just that, I know that people are like that sometimes, and that they, have that sort of desire to want to, reach out and slap someone when they have.
I want to reach out and slap some of the fans.
I agree. It's pretty remarkable, But again, that's the business that we're in. I mean, it's sort of Vince stirs this pot so much with the audience, and he cultivates an audience to have that sort of visceral reaction from it, and he thrives off of that. And by thriving off of it, it creates that kind of festering, kind of bubbling crude that we're seeing. And I don't know. I mean, it's hard to control. But AEW fans are not that much better when they bash the WWE fans back the other way.
I think it's almost comical. The AEW fans go and buy a ticket to a WWE show, and then they photograph the empty sections. Then the WWE fans go to the AEW shows and photograph the empty seats. And then they mock each other. And I'm like, you dopes, you just bought tickets to something you hated, to mock each other. It makes no sense. You're just putting money in billionaires' pockets. If you don't like it, don't support it.
And when I was younger and watching the AWA and the WWF and the NWA, I always felt like that was cool to like all the different leagues and to like appreciate the different universes of each one of those feds, and the fact that I understood that all my favorite wrestlers couldn't be in one federation. That it would be impossible to fit them all. So to have three different feds like the AWA, NWA, and WWF gave different leagues that you could enjoy talent in three different ways. But there wasn't this sort of you had to be an NWA fan, you had to be an AWA fan.
It's like a gang war now.
Yeah, that's the whole thing. Is I didn't seem to remember people saying you had to love one or the other.
I don't quite get the religious fervor on either side, where the WWE could do the most despicable business practices imaginable, and their fans will support them no matter what. Oh, they're just sitting and catering, like they're worried about Vince's food bill. And then the AEW fans, it's like the religious fervor, I hate to tell you, as good as these guys are, Adam Cole is not Terry Funk, okay? Hangman Page is not Stan Hansen. They're just not. And as good as these guys are, and I enjoy them, and I respect them, the religious fervor is a bit much, and I could understand why that would be grating on the WWE corporate apologist as well. I enjoy AEW's TV. I do not enjoy the 27 commercials in the middle of the quality matches that take me out of the match. You're watching a great world title match, and all of a sudden you're hearing liberty, 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 and I'm like, oh my God, make it stop, make it stop. You know, it's forget that picture-in-picture stuff. It doesn't work. I'm sorry. Make the match.
And Vince's, it wouldn't be so grating if we thought, okay, Vince needs to sell the time to make money because he's barely
I'm talking AEW does that. The picture.
Right. Both Khan's a billionaire, and the WWE was recently rated as what, worth something like 3 point something billion dollars,
something like
3.2 billion. I mean, there's no lost money that's going on anywhere here. So why they have to push every single second and make you feel like you're being, grabbed by the heels and shaken upside down for the money is a really
It's not that complicated. Instead of having a 20-minute match with commercials right in the middle, have a 13-minute match with no commercials and have a ton of commercials on both sides of it.
Sure, although they do that too now. They put a lot of commercials on both sides as well. It's just that they can't hold it back. They're like, if any, soon what we're going to have is wrestlers have the actual ads like holographically imprinted on their chests. So it's going on during the match, the entire match. You'll see Liberty, 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 on their foreheads and on their, superimposed on their chests and on their legs and stuff like that. So that'll be the next thing is the wrestler will do. Maybe someone should do that as an angle, is like the ultimate sellout. Is somebody who just comes to the ring in one of those bodysuits and like every inch has like some sponsor's name on it. That's not the next thing that we need.
So as somebody who's watching wrestling literally for 50 years, I started watching in 1972. I started attending in 74. 50 years. So I'm going to give you a sane, older person's perspective. No, not everything is bad in WWE. Every pay-per-view, they have 2 or 3 quality matches surrounded by the instantly forgettable vanilla pablum. But every pay-per-view, they have 2 or 3 quality matches. And no, not everything in AEW is high art. Some of those skits, some of those characters are pretty stupid also. I'm sorry. But as a whole, a 2-hour AEW TV show is so superior to a 3-hour stultifying Raw. I mean, it's just a superior wrestling show, even with the silly gimmicks and some of the silly promos and the endless commercials. It's just better TV.
Well, I think that there's more of a sense of they're trying stuff, and we see where they're failing and when they're getting better. And it seems like as they move forwards, as they evolve, they're focusing more on the stuff that's better than the stuff that isn't good. Whereas the WWE seems totally blind to that. There's never a point at which we all say, boy, that was terrible. We say SummerSlam, or we say the Royal Rumble was terrible. And now, WrestleMania is probably going to be terrible too. I mean, I don't feel like this kind of Roman Reigns against Brock Lesnar match is anything that you wouldn't normally see, except for the fact that Brock Lesnar's got this wonderful insulated contract where he's like the Undertaker. He only has to fight 5 times a year, to get $4.5 million. It's like getting paid like $1 million for 5 minutes worth of work, each month or not even that, like every 3 or 4 months. And the WWE cries poverty and has to get rid of dozens of wrestlers.
Dozens, over 100.
Yeah, well, you get a 12 dozen, you're over 100. But they get rid of so many people, and yet, like people like Ronda Rousey get an instant paycheck. Bad Bunny gets an instant paycheck right away. The WWE doesn't think twice about throwing the money at a big name even though with that Ronda Rousey, you probably, if you don't have Ronda Rousey in the Royal Rumble, you probably could keep 50 of the 100 that they got rid of. Wouldn't you agree? Whatever they paid her, probably would have kept the rest of them all in contract.
I think if you took the part-timers like Rousey, Goldberg, Lesnar, you could have kept most of those people you got rid of, sure. But Vince believes in the big names, being draws. What I find interesting is, for example, they're coming to Madison Square Garden, WWE, and they have Lesnar and Lashley listed as the main event, and Reigns and Rollins is the co-feature. And the ads always have like the same 5 guys or 6 people. These are the people that Vince perceived as the stars, as the draws. It's usually Charlotte Flair and Lesnar and Reigns, of course. So who Vince sees as his guys and his women. And, the rest of them are basically warm bodies on a card from Cesaro on down. And doesn't matter how great you are, you're not on Vince's good list. He's like the principal with a good and bad list, like every school I've ever taught at.
Let's also talk about the brand split. There have been a lot of talk about the brand split and whether they should get rid of the brand split.
Yeah, get rid of it. It's why would you have 2 world champions? It just dilutes it. When they say, for example, John Cena has 16 world titles, I'm like, not really. If there was 2 champions at the same time, it's to me, it's worth half as much.
At least I could say though that because Dilip Singh, the great Khali, had a WWE championship, that I managed a WWE champion, at least for one night. So I can say on my resume that I did manage a WWE champion, but he was one of the worst champions in history. While I was driving around today, because I was stuck in a bunch of traffic, I did think about that a lot to myself, which is, wouldn't it be, do you think, I would like to see, if I were Vince, and, first of all, if I was Vince, I wouldn't be worrying about any bills or anything like that are coming, that kind of thing. But if I was Vince, I would like to see it go down, the brands unified again, and go down to just back to 1 WWE World Heavyweight Championship, 1 Intercontinental Champion, and just the tag belts, the world tag belt. 3 titles. That's it. Just get it back down, and a women's championship, and maybe a women's tag, But that's it. 3 men's titles. I'd like to see it get down to that. That would make those titles mean something. Right now, first of all, if you say you would offer me $1,000 to name correctly in one guess the Intercontinental Champion, I couldn't tell you. I just don't know. I forgot. And 50% of the time, I think he was the U.S. champion because I don't put that much stock in who the U.S. champion is. And, then the WWE will introduce an Extreme title. Then they'll get rid of it. They'll introduce a 24/7 title. They'll get rid of it. They'll have a junior heavyweight championship. Then they'll get rid of it. Then they'll have an Extreme championship. They'll have an X division league, and they'll get rid of it. They'll bring in all these titles, and really, as you said, it dilutes who is really the man in charge and who is the guy that you want to see beaten, or you want to see be the champion and beat his competition. That was one of the great parts of Bruno Sammartino's reign and Hulk Hogan being champion. You knew they were the ultimate guy in the feds.
Yeah, I agree. And I see posts like, who do you think was WWE's greatest European champion? I'm like, I don't remember one guy in one match. It's meaningless. Come on. Yeah,
it's if you ask me even to separate out the Intercontinental champions versus the U.S. champions, and I had to, and it was one of those things I get an electric shock if I name the wrong one, I wouldn't take that test because it used to be that the Intercontinental Championship was and sometimes involved better matches than the world title.
Well, let me tell the younger fans who may not realize the Intercontinental belt was basically brought in because Backlund wasn't quite the draw that Bruno was. Okay, so they figured now we have not only the World Championship, we have the Intercontinental Championship and the Tag Team Championship. So when they had house shows, which was their bread and butter, they could advertise 3 World Championship matches, and sometimes they'd even bring in Moolah or whatever and have another one. But so there were nights where Backlund would have a lesser opponent, and there's Morocco and Snooker, in the main event. Is what we perceived as the main event. The main event technically was Backlund, but we thought of the IC championship as the main event on certain nights. And guys like Morocco, Tito Santana, Greg Valentine, Pedro Morales,
Randy Savage, Bret Hart,
Randy Savage. I mean, they legitimized it. These were great all-time top 10, top 20 wrestlers of all time. And
it was a great stepping stone. It was a great way to put a guy in as a champion that was not necessarily a good enough draw to be a world champion, but still you would have a lot of those Intercontinental matches be significant enough that they would draw all by themselves. I got to say, the Bret Hart, Roddy Piper Intercontinental match is one of the great matches of all time. I love that one.
I don't remember it.
That was in WrestleMania. I forget which.
Oh, yeah, WrestleMania. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a great match. Some of the Razor Ramon, Bret Hart Intercontinental titles were phenomenal. Even the Ultimate Warrior, when he was champ, had some really, intense matches. They weren't, technically, you weren't talking Hackenschmidt against God or anything like that. But still, they had, build up to them, or people were excited to see, DiBiase against. And you even pointed out that people were saying that The Miz is better than DiBiase.
Yeah, there are geniuses who write that The Miz in ring is better than Ted DiBiase, which is utterly insane.
Oh my God.
So what I find interesting today is they'll say a great champion is somebody who, yes, puts over the storylines, has charisma, but then they go off on these tangents. They get a lot of views. They get a lot of clicks. They sell a lot of T-shirts. And I'm like, what about great matches? What about great matches? You can't tell me that The Miz is having great matches.
I can't name a single great. I personally cannot name a single great Miz match.
He's a great character. He's a great
I don't think
talker.
so. You see, I'm not sold on anything about The Miz. I actually really dislike him.
I'm being polite.
I know, and I'm not, because I just don't like him. I mean, I don't like watching him. I don't enjoy his shtick.
It's very vanilla.
He's just not so. I go further, but it's not heel shtick that makes me dislike him. I just think if I met him in person, I wouldn't get along with him. He's just not my kind of person. He's the kind of person just annoys me, and not in a good way, not in a good wrestling kayfabe.
But you see, the fanboys would spin that as he's doing his job as a heel. He's getting you to dislike him, and I say no. As an old school fan, all I care about is seeing great wrestling. I want to see great wrestling. That's why I turn on wrestling. Okay? I don't need to see The Miz do a 10-minute promo with his wife on some stupid angle. I don't care. I just don't care. And I don't mean to just pick on him. I'm sure he's a lovely human being. But I mean,
I'm not sure of that, but go ahead.
But, to be wildly rewarded for doing, direct to video, bad movies, reality shows, mediocre wrestling, let a guy like Cesaro, who could wrestle circles around the Miz, push somebody like that.
Or a guy like Bray Wyatt. Don't, paint Bray Wyatt in a corner and make him have to leave. Don't make, Strowman have to leave, because they feel like that they're just being completely, put under the, shoved under the rug.
I saw Bray Wyatt headline Madison Square Garden twice. Place was packed. He was totally over. The matches were excellent. One was with Cena, one was with Reigns. Guy was totally over. I don't know how they managed to kill him off. I mean, I don't even grasp the whole thing.
Well, and when you look at like a guy like, I was thinking, about your stuff when you talk about motivation, and if we're able to do something where you can show how somebody got to a particular level or where they got there. I think Cesaro's story would be fascinating for people to know, but the WWE never brings him up and never talks about it.
Cesaro, I saw a headline for ROH against Nigel McGuinness. Tremendous match, totally credible to the crowd as a legit contender. This guy, if this were the NWA of the 80s, he'd be a world champion, because what they used to do back in the day was get a Dory Funk Jr. or a Jack Briscoe. They would find the best wrestler to be the world champion.
Bob Armstrong
was never world champion. He was a regional champion.
But they pushed him.
Yeah.
A push, they because of his raw athleticism. They even did it with a guy like Magnum TA or Terry Taylor, back in the day, for
WWE killed Terry Taylor.
I know, they sure did. But
he was getting a push in UWF and NWA. He was a solid wrestler. WWE killed him.
Oh, I remember his feud for the World Television title against Jake the Snake Roberts. And that was just when I started getting back into wrestling again. And that was a white hot feud. That was the kind of thing that people would take their day off on Saturday to go watch TBS to see the Terry Taylor, Jake the Snake Roberts title match.
Well, that was the height of, Vince's characters. Dory Funk Jr. now was Horse Funk. HOSS. It's like, put a gun to my head. Harley Race is the king. Terry Funk, Chainsaw Charlie. I mean, come on, please. Not everybody.
The only one that worked was Mick Foley, because Mick Foley was already a character wrestler.
Mick Foley was great. I have no problem with Mick Foley, but Mick Foley wasn't vanilla like The Miz. Mick Foley had an edge to him. That's why
and he was meant for the WWE's type of style of being a character wrestler. That played right into who he was. And that's one thing, is I don't mind putting a character on a guy that wants to be that character. That's something that means something to them. Like Rey Mysterio, putting the mask on him. That works. Or even like turning Dewey Robertson into the Missing Link. He really was into that character, the Missing Link. I mean, that was awesome, of course.
Yeah, I saw Dewey Robertson in the WWF in the 70s, and he was basically a mid-card guy, and the Missing Link, he became a main event guy, so it worked. It obviously
I love the Missing Link. I think that was one of my favorite wrestlers, although now that we know everything we know about CTE, when you see him hit himself on the head with the chair so many times and do so many headbutt moves, it makes you kind of cringe a little.
Yeah. I don't have a problem with characters, but when they're silly, unconvincing, vanilla characters, then I have a problem with it. And, it is what it is.
Well, it's true, but I do think it's important to see, the way that wrestling fans are today. That's not important to them. What's important, as you talk about, are clicks and merchandise sales. And it all becomes how popular you are outside the ring more than what you've done in the ring to make yourself a winner or get over with the fans.
Speaking of outside, the fanboys who fixate on the number of tickets sold and the ratings, if this is the foremost thing weighing on you, you have kids, I had a bunch of friends who died, etc., so on. One of your parents just died. I mean, if the most important thing weighing on
one of my dad and my uncle died.
Yeah. So if the most important thing weighing on you is that there's some empty seats in an arena, please, right now, fanboy, go outside, leave your apartment, kiss the ground that you walk on in gratitude.
It reminds me of the William Shatner sketch that he had with the Star Trek fans. It's like, have you ever kissed a girl? Like, yeah. It's like, Yeah. It's the dateless wonders, unfortunately, that rule the roost.
I mean, the seething hatred that they have for the other team, AEW versus WWE. It's bizarre to me. I mean,
and they were all wrestlers that were just in the previous Fed that you said you loved. So, that's the other thing, is that they say, oh, I hate, Bearcat Lee now. But, a month ago, you were all buying the push that the WWE was giving you.
So now the WWE fans look at Lee. He's just a fat guy that's going to be wasted in AEW. A month ago, they loved the guy. He was a killing machine. Now they hate the guy. It's mind-boggling.
It is weird. It's because, the internet makes it so easy for people to, before, people had probably these same opinions back in the WWF days and the AWA days and so forth, but we never got to hear them. People would just, maybe, write Pro Wrestling Illustrated and hope that their letter would get published. But by and large, we didn't have blogs, and we didn't have vlogs, and we didn't have podcasts where everybody was able to, voice all this stuff. And social media is sometimes anything but.
The guys who scare me are the ones that do imaginary Chris Benoit matches. It's like, who would win between Chris and Haystacks Calhoun? It's like, dude, you got to have something better to do with your time than dream up imaginary matches with a guy who killed his wife and kid. Oh man.
Yeah, no, it's again a weird world that we inhabit, and it's sort of halfway like comic book nerddom versus like the sports obsessives, like the kind of like 50-50 of those two worlds, and they both collide into a weird melange of hatred and desperation. Not so quiet.
I have no problem with any WWE wrestler. I don't like some of their business practices. Those are two totally different issues. I see fans wishing wrestlers would get hurt, wishing wrestlers would get fired. This is really crossing a line into obsessive. I don't want to see anybody hurt or fired. Whether I appreciate their work or not, these are human beings. They have families, they have kids. And since I'm mentioning that, lost to a lot of these guys when they do the WWE corporate apologist stuff, a lot of these wrestlers relocated, sold their homes, pulled their kids out of school, took their kids away from their friends to get an opportunity, or at least what they thought was an opportunity. And they're sitting there, twiddling their thumbs because the ironically named creative has nothing for them. And next thing you know, their names on a spreadsheet, and their future endeavored, and it's all over before they blink. And it's just not fair. You don't ask people to relocate and not give them a fair chance. So the fanboys will go, all the companies do this, all the corporations do this. No. That's not true. Dolly Parton over in Dollywood, as ridiculous as this may sound, she's putting every one of her workers through college. Anybody that wants it. part-time or full-time. Not every businessman is a ruthless scumbag. Not all. Many, most, the majority, not all. Okay? Don't
just that Vince makes it hard for the rest of them to he runs the reputation for the rest of them. So what I wanted to talk about, well, we have last 15 minutes left of the show, is I wanted to kind of just go over with you, in your mind, what are some of the highlights of the 100 shows that we've done so far? What comes to mind?
The highlights were me getting to vent, so I didn't have a nervous breakdown during COVID. I get to vent every week, and we've
had some really good guests on here in the 100 shows.
Oh yeah, no doubt. But for me, since this to me is like performance art. We don't have sponsors. We're not beholden to anyone. I don't care who I insult.
No scripts.
What's
no
that?
Scripts. We have no scripts.
It's totally improvised. We don't know what we're going to say even 5 seconds before we start. So to me, it's
sometimes even 5 seconds after we've started, we don't even know what we're saying.
Yeah, I mean, to me, this is therapy, and I have a love-hate relationship with pro wrestling, as well as other things, but pro wrestling in particular. I've had legends pour their hearts out to me, sleep on my couch, dear friends who the business did not do good by, and the fanboys who they all blew it on Wine, Women, and Song. Listen, idiots, some of these guys never broke $100,000. They were main eventing around the world, never broke $100,000.
One of the fascinating things from your 350 Days documentary is that you asked all of them, would they do it again? And every single one of them said they'd do it again, even the ones that didn't turn out well or had tough lives.
Yes, because they saw the world on someone else's dime, like any job, except it's extremes in pro wrestling, not just WWE, in pro wrestling. These guys traveled the world. Women throwing themselves at them, partying.
But we've interviewed indie folks, and they haven't traveled the world, and they still say they would do it all over again. Some of them don't lead really glamorous lives, but they still say they would do it all over again.
The indies, we've both heel managed on the indies. You much more so than I. The thing is, on the indies, it's a different thing. It's like a surrogate family. It's like these are your friends, these are your confidants. You might one of the wrestlers might be dating another wrestler. This is basically your surrogate family. The promoter is like a surrogate father or mother in many cases.
And you're all trying to live your dream at the same time. That's one thing that people don't get about wrestling, is that we're all in this dream state when we're at the show and when we're performing, and that capturing that dream and being in that dream, when you're having a good dream, you never want it to stop. And when you're in a wrestling ring and it's going your way, and the show is going exactly how you want, your match is going exactly how you want, you don't want it to stop. That was one thing you captured in The Wrestler. That is one thing, especially right at the very end. He
was willing to die in The Wrestler.
Yeah, he was willing to die because at least he died in the moment. He died doing what he had always wanted to do for the fans. And that meant more to him than life meant, where he didn't get any of those things.
Well, since this is wrestling and everything, you could expand on that. A singer needs to sing, a dancer needs to dance, an actor needs to act, a teacher needs to teach, and we need to do radio. Because I'm doing this for 30 years. To me, like I said before, it's very therapeutic. So wrestling, I've seen too many people die young, but I've also seen people, Lanny Poffo doesn't have a lot of regrets. Lanny's like, I traveled the entire world and I had a good time on somebody else's dime. So there is that side of it. And being a journalist or whatnot, quote unquote wrestling journalist, which may be the lowest form of journalist, but yeah, writing up Raw every week is not really the highest peak of journalism. But um, the truth is that you're in Madison Square Garden in a main event, and you're controlling that crowd, 20,000 people. That's a high. That's a high that most people will never experience. And these guys,
Even if it's 100 people, it's still something.
Sure, of course.
You know,
mean, dinner theater isn't Broadway, but you still love doing dinner theater.
Or doing those bar gigs. If you're a band and you're playing your local bar, you're not going to be, it's not Budokan, live at the Budokan, but it's still people believing in your talent, and they're getting up there and they're dancing because you're making the music, or they're cheering because you're making the promotion. You're giving the promo that's causing people to either cheer for you or boo for you. It's an amazing thing. But we've had some amazing guests on here. I just wanted to thank some of the folks like Lanny Poffo for being on the show. Steve Tai is another one. Wayne Matthijs, the guy who Sergeant Slaughter from The Rock, the Young Rock. Yeah. Steve Ludwig and Nikita Brezhnikov and Solomon Chertok from last week, and my friend JJ Purdom, and we've had Matsuda's daughter. I'm trying to remember her name right now, but we've had such an amazing array of guests, and Gene Basone has been, absolutely fantastic.
Hollywood from Glow, yeah.
I mean, we and that for me has been one of the great things, is to be able to, especially when COVID hit and we weren't able to travel at all. This show has allowed me to reach out from beyond where I'm at in San Francisco and travel to New York City, to Australia, to South America with Javier Ost, and to go to Atlanta, and to go to
JP Zarker in England.
JP Zarker in England, exactly.
Mark Madison in Canada.
And Germany, and we've been to so many different places, and met Oscar from Men on a Mission. And these are people I wouldn't be able in the last 2 years to go out and see, and I was able to make friends with them through this medium, and that has expanded my world in ways that I never would have thought possible. And it is, after 100 shows, something I'm entirely grateful for.
I've met some of the most wonderful, eclectic, interesting people through pro wrestling, and some of them are dear friends. And one of these days, I'm going to have on Chris Michaels, who was in WWE, and he was also ECW tag champs. Early, he was a tag champ early, before Heyman, when Eddie Gilbert was booking. And Chris is one of my dearest friends. He's Republican. I'm liberal. He's pro-gun. I'm anti-gun. He's anti-vax. I'm pro-vax. One of my dearest friends. That in and of itself would make for an interesting show. How two people so different. I love the guy. The guy's awesome, So,
but that's one thing about you, Evan, is that you will respect people with different opinions. You don't have to have somebody have to mirror your opinion for you to respect them.
Well, to a degree. I mean, I'm not going to tolerate racism, xenophobia, homophobia. But my friend Chris, who I just mentioned, who has a pretty distinguished wrestling career, he worked he worked everybody in WWE, Flair, and all the greats. I mean, on WWE TV. Chris is a Republican, white guy, married to a black woman, raising black kids, So don't give me the all Republicans are racist bullshit. That's nonsense also. I'm a liberal, man. And, I call things as I see it. So, you know, don't make assumptions about me, and I will make assumptions about you. It's people are people. Basically, people want the same thing. They want a nice place to live, nice family, a partner, friends, a decent job, food on the table. People are people. It's the extremists on all sides. The nutcases on the right, the nutcases on the left. No, looting is not okay. Sorry, extreme left. Looting is not okay. Okay? No, not all.
Extremism on either side is intolerable.
No, not all cops are bad, extreme left. I'm sorry. I've had a half dozen friends and family who are cops. They're not all bad. So there are nutcases on both ends. But
Still, I think this show has always approached all of our guests and all of our subjects with a large amount of respect. I think that's how we approach these things. Unless they're, the overbearing fanboys that are saying, the Miz is the greatest wrestler of all time, and Bruno Sammartino wouldn't even stand 5 seconds in the ring with him. The people that are extreme, we don't give the respect to. But the people who come at us or who come into the show with a reasonable and well thought out opinion is something that we respect, and we've always shown that respect, and we always will show the respect for, because that's the kind of people that we are. And I think that as long as we have that ability to show that we respect them coming in, we're getting that respect back, and that's one of the things I'm very proud of with this show.
Everything has pluses and minuses. Every job, every relationship, every house, apartment, car, whatever the case may be. Everything has pluses and minuses. If you're a quote-unquote journalist, you acknowledge both sides. We try to do that here. And hey, look, as much as I disrespect certain things Vince does, they're also very charitable. They support breast cancer. They have their hands in a lot of different charities. They do good and bad things, just like, but I just resent that the once king of sports has deteriorated into sports entertainment that quite often is not entertaining. That is my beef. Okay.
Well, I think that's a pretty good, note to end on, and as we move into 2022 here and show 101 and so on and so forth, what are you looking forward to with this show?
I can announce a couple of guests for March. You haven't even heard this yet. Dobie Maxwell. Dobie Maxwell is a great stand-up comic who loves pro wrestling. He's done radio. He's been a radio host. He's a great guest. I've done shows with him in the past, not on this show, but on other shows. Tremendous. He loves wrestling, and he's a comedian, so he's a great guest because the guy's just plain funny. And also, Coach Mike Jones is coming back, along with his radio partner, Jason Amos from Turnbuckle Turmoil, their radio show. They're going to be back in March. So those are some upcoming guests. And like I said,
Leno should probably also have some people lined up too. We might do something as a tribute to Candy Devine, who passed away this week. Just a quick mention of her. I actually saw her wrestle in the WWF against Leilani Kai, and I saw her against Medusa Michelli in an AWA match way back in the day, and I always respected her talent and so forth. But we'll get more into that next week, because Leno, I think, knew her even better and has more stories.
Speaking of journalism, I'll tell you something interesting that happened with her. Slam Wrestling, who I do respect because they cover indie wrestlers who pass, historians, just wrestling super fans. They acknowledge everybody when they pass, which most wrestling media doesn't. But in their piece on Candy Divine, they wrote something that was critical of her early days in the business, and people did not react well to it. So part of me is like, it's like, don't tell a 9/11 joke on 9/12. It's not gonna get over. You have to be gentle when you're writing about somebody who just passed. But as journalism, they felt that this showed her growth as a wrestler. She wasn't quite good in the beginning, and then she grew into a legitimate star and a legitimate talent. So again, journalism is telling two sides of a story, but it just gets a little sensitive when it's when somebody passes. So,
unfortunately, we get too much experience having to write about wrestlers passing, because during this show, probably in the 100 shows, probably about 95 of them, we've had to mention somebody dying, it seems like.
Over the past 2 years, it's been horrible. And like I said, I lost 6 friends. So I do appreciate this show to acknowledge them and acknowledge my wrestling heroes and my heroes in the arts. And one by one, none of us are getting any younger, and this COVID certainly hasn't helped. It's man.
Somehow we persevere on. So we made it through another week. We'll make it through another week again, and we'll see everyone next Sunday. We had a special Super Bowl show for tonight, but we'll have Mike Lino on here, and we'll talk about Candy Divine and all sorts of other subjects.
And all you old white folk, enjoy the rappers during the halftime.
Exactly.
Give it a try. Give it a try. You'll appreciate it.
Good deal. All right. Great seeing you. Good to see everyone. We'll see everybody next week. Good night.